This is one word executed in 3 different ways. And this is the power of sketching, playing with ideas and having fun. Have fuck tons of fun. Now look, we're in the new space, we're in my comfort zone. I've got my pencil and I've got my paper. That's all I've got. But in this little module, what I wanted to do is give you some sketch techniques. Now look, I'm not going to go into any sort of crazy detail about like fine-tuning grids, or we'll probably do a little bit of that when it comes to kind of like how we transfer stuff onto the computer a little bit later, like going from sketch to digital. But in these sketch techniques, I just want you to be able to learn some ways in which I use and apply and work with emotion, shape, thought patterns. I'm going to be doing a little bit of gridding. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with, well, the 3 things we're going to work on are taking a specific word and then trying to visualize it in different ways. So we're going to start with the word move. Secondly, we're going to talk about some sketch techniques about how to kind of add emotion and stuff like that. And then the third one, what we're going to do is we're going to show you, I am going to show you how we can use some templated grids to kind of help structure and balance our designs. And I'm actually going to give you like sheets of like different types of grids that you can use to practice. So first one is we're going to go with a word called move. So when I think of the word called move, like I said, these are just kind of fucking made up, so don't stress too much about what I'm using. But like, how can we show movement within a design? How can we, like, through either symbology or like different angles or like overlapping letters, like what are some ways in which we can add movement to our designs in a few different styles? So very simply, what I would do to kind of start this off is, like, obviously when I think of move, I think of like arrows, you know, in different directions, for example. Like you'll see, nothing here is going to be super tidy. I might also think of, like, you know, maybe like an italicized kind of jobby here. I might also think of like how movement happens, you know, within certain things. Do you know what I mean? So there are different ways in which we can kind of use a word to dictate and help us kind of activate our ideas. So let's start with, which one should we start with? We'll start with this kind of italicized one here. I don't even know if italicized is a word, but ultimately what I would always do, and I'm going to kind of use a mixture, like a mixture of kind of pen and paper so you can see it. But what I would always do, especially when I'm doing some sort of like logo type word mark, is I would create myself some sort of rough grid, change my pencils, and then obviously using the word move. So I can use this grid that I've used to, this forward lean shows some balance and shows some movement and kind of makes everything kind of sturdy-ish. So I would kind of come in here and I'd probably break this into, like, you know, I know it's got 4 letters, so I'd split it down the middle, and then, you know, so I know I've got my M, my O, my V, and my E. And then what I would do is I would kind of come in here and I would just kind of very roughly start to kind of, using all these angles, I would start to kind of build out my letter forms, making sure that, always trying to make sure that these are somewhat kind of consistent in width. Ultimately what we're going to do with all of this is we're going to move into computer. This is purely conceptual, purely for idea generation, so I'm not even going to try too hard to make it super accurate. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get an idea of whether this would particularly work as a possible direction. So with my V, I'm kind of coming in here, and then I'm going, I'm bringing this down. Do you know what I mean? Trying to keep this movement moving. And you can see how this kind of very rough grid allows me some sort of sense of like, well, I know roughly how wide my things are going to be. I know this needs to be the same as this, and this needs to be the same as this. You know, this weight here needs to be a very similar weight to this here. So I'm kind of bringing in, you always bring your ease in a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not trying too hard to be super accurate here. But like already you can feel this has got like some sense of movement. And then what I would generally do here, like knowing that I kind of want to make it a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more aggressive, is like what I'd possibly do in like the O here, for example. Let me try and do it a little bit neater. So say this was my O, what I'd actually try to do, because this is moving this way, so I want to try and make this a slightly more dynamic movement. So what I would do is I would generally have, you know, you've got your little counter in here. You know, we learnt that earlier on in the anatomy. So we got this kind of thing going on here. What I might do is I might use this just to show you, like, so I've got my O shape here, and because I want to make this a little bit more dynamic, what I'd probably do is I'd probably just shift a little nook in here. Do you know what I mean? And that would probably be a little bit smaller than that, if I'm honest, but you get the idea. So it gives it that kind of little depth. It looks like a little 1. But like that kind of little notch just gives it that movement. And then within the E as well, I'll very quickly show you how I'd mirror that, for example. So like in here, like what I would probably do is I'd mirror that shape. So you'd go, and then you'd have that little nook here, which would come down before you kind of go into the E, other bits of the E. And what it does is it just shows that kind of dynamic movement, that edge. Alright, so this is one way you could kind of show movement, that kind of italicized direction, that kind of dynamic movement. Now, the other ways in which we can do that. So a little thing that I like to do with reference to especially typography is I like to, like we kind of talked about earlier, is I don't really like to see letters as letters. I like to see letters as shapes, because that allows me to be a little bit more fluid with them. And when we're thinking about this rolling movement, you know, like I see, which I'm just going to kind of put a cross here so you know I'm onto something different here. So when I think of like an M, you know, for example, you know, it can have this sense of movement, and then that might do that, and then your O might be in here, and then I'm thinking like, how can I, do you know what I mean, like probably like the V could like woo, do you know what I mean, like it could go like this, you know, and then maybe this shape, this little curve here can house my E. Do you know what I mean? So when we're thinking of movement, I'm thinking of movement in a slightly different way here, where I'm actually kind of using this much softer approach. So imagine this being like a sports brand, Move sports brand, and this being Move, maybe like a kid's playground or a kid's play area, for example, like going for a much softer, weavier, flowy approach. But what I'm doing is I'm understanding that, you know, using these shapes to create this dynamic sense of movement. You know, even like that could, like, let's kind of develop it a little bit further. So, like, again, like none of these mean anything, do you know what I mean? But like, I'd like to kind of continue this, and then like this, and then maybe like that could do that, and then carry on, and then meet into this E. Woohoo! And then my little O shape can be in like this negative space here. Do you know what I mean? So you've kind of got this, I mean, this is pretty shit, but you kind of get the idea, this constant sense of movement. Wee. See, and you can have fun with it, but you kind of got this O in the negative space, and like what I'd probably do is like to kind of see if I can make it work. I mean, I probably would have already fobbed off this idea because I don't think it will work, but this is what you do. You practice, you sketch, you see what works, you know, and then you bring this round. I quite like this kind of transition though, which I didn't see before. Well, like you say, like I say, this sense of movement, I was wondering whether there was this way that I could like have this continuous line that went round and round. Like, I'm not trying to be accurate here. I'm just trying to see what connections there are, what things I can do, how I can make something that's unique. Like this little O in here in the negative space. Is it obvious enough? Probably not. But what it does do is it gives me more ideas. And like as I say, when we move back up to this one, and when I'm creating these, I know that I'm going to make them more accurate when I move them or transition into digital, like we'll do later. But what I'm seeing here is like, hang on a minute, maybe I can move this little guy like through here and loop into here to make it more of a move shape, which might be quite cool. So let's just kind of roughly, very quickly try and change that before we go on to our third move. So this lovely flowing like wee, and then we've got a wee, wee, wee. Do you know what I mean? So we've got our, then we've got our O in here. Do you know what I mean? That might work, but what I'd have to do is I'd have to make sure that this part here, like we'll go into a little bit more detail. Imagine this carried on here. I'd probably stop that there, and then I'd start it again here. So it went behind it to make the V a little bit more obvious. I'll tell you what, for like something that I've just made up off the top of my head, I'm quite excited about this. You know, this is probably the direction that I'd, you know, again based on brief, but it shows movement, it's fun, kids playground area, it looks like kind of slides and flumes and all sorts of crazy shit. So I love that. Finally, so we've done this guy, we've done this guy, and now we're on to this lassie, the arrows. So arrows are a good sense of movement. So I'm thinking like, how can I use arrows? And I kind of like look up here, and I see this arrow here. I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, maybe there's something I can do with like negative space. So let's try. Let's at least try. You know, it could be a colossal fuck up, but we're going to give it a go because that's what we do, and ultimately nobody gives as much of a shit as we do about the work we do. So let me try and figure this out. So negative space, so I need triangles here. So if I was going to do my M, I'd need a triangle here. I'd need the same triangles here, another one, my brain's trying to work this out, here, so I've got my M shape, and then what I need is another one here, and then I'd need another one here. So in here I've got my M. And then what I would do is I'd probably use this. Like if we were, you know, when we're talking about like building like logo marks or symbols that work within type. So the type can work by itself, but then we can pull something out that can work as a secondary symbol. You know, when we talk about the compromise that we were going through earlier in the course, this would be a great compromise. I don't want a word mark. I don't want a logo type. Oh, okay, well, what we can do is we can put this little symbol in the M, and then you'll have the best of both worlds. Do you know what I mean? It's not that accurate right now, but you can see the M, and then what I'd do is I'd move on, and I'd just have my O, then I'd have my V, whoop, and then E, so this would actually stand out. Yeah, these are just rough grids to help me a little bit. But you can see how, like right now I'm thinking, right, that's actually a pretty cool concept. Tech company, do you know what I mean? Keep these quite simple, use this as a separate mark, maybe have this as a different colour. But then I could even use these to tessellate and create something cooler. So that is pretty cool. I'm just thinking, even I'm back up to this one. He's back up here. Like I've just seen here, like what I could possibly do here is join. Like this. This could join here and then start here. So that V could be a part of this, and that to show more movement, and then that comes like this. Do you know what I mean? So this is what you do when you start conceptualizing and start building and like trying to use, like you've seen with some of my work, like Lightwave and other bits and pieces like that, where I'm actually using the words to dictate my kind of creative direction, trying to add that sense of movement, especially within this one. Like using different arrows, like using different styles, using something a bit more flowy. Like this is one word executed in 3 different ways. And this is the power of sketching, playing with ideas and having fun. Have fuck tons of fun. The second part of our sketch, what we're calling it, sketch techniques, we're going to be working on emotion. Timmy, Timmy, he's gone. He's gone for a little. Yeah. He's gone for a little vape. What? This is a dangerous question to ask Timmy. Give me like very obvious emotions, so people know. Give me 2 emotions off the top of your head that you have to deal with on the daily. So having kids.
Working with you.
Yeah.
Number 1.
Yeah, that's not an emotion. Like
anger.
Anger. What's the other one?
Working with you.
Yeah.
Happy. Happiness, happy.
Thank you for giving me 2. I mean, that very works. Works?
That very works.
That very works with your totally dual personality.
And now we're straight because I've given you happiness and anger.
Yeah, so now we're kind of level again,
yeah.
Which is great. But these are really good ones. These are really fun ones to play with. So you think about the personality traits, you think, I mean, hopefully none of your clients' personality traits are anger, for example, but what I want to kind of show you is how you can build emotion into your type. So, because like I said, like when we go through our brand essence, our brand discovery, and we look up personality traits like bold, confident, luxurious, adventurous, happy, angry, whatever it is, we can actually start to build those within our design. So when I think of anger, I think of like very sharp, like bah, like bah, 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 bah. Do you know what I mean? Like very sharp, angular. So I'm looking for the right decent sized pen. 8 will do. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking like super like you see, I didn't put any grids in there because I'm an angry man, like Timmy. Like I'm just so angry, I just rebel. against all of the rules, and I don't care about people or my kids or my life, and I just hate everybody.
Sometimes I push in the queue at Tesco's.
I'm sure you do. It's a very English thing to queue, isn't it? Nobody else queues. But yeah, I just probably point all these. And like what I would probably do as well, I'm just going to kind of very roughly colour this in and ruin my pen, but even this scratchy effect that it's being given is actually quite angry. But I am also imagine it's also like when you're coming to your sketch phases, the tools that you use are also really, really, really important. So you think of like a scratchy fountain pen, I'd bring this end down, or like a paintbrush where you've got those kind of lines and that kind of distressed look. That might be a cool filter or texture you could kind of add to your. Sorry, I'm kind of. I'm trying to. My dyslexia doesn't allow me to do multiple things at once, as you all know. So yeah, this anger. So. Is that G angry enough? Maybe I need to angle it more. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why I make all these weird noises. I've never really noticed it before. But yeah, I'd bring this G in. And I'd bring this, make it like really sharp and really angular. And like I said, like kind of like it was shouting at you. Anger, which is also why I used uppercase, because it's angry. Super angry. And like I said, I'm not worrying too much about the kind of composition too much. I'm just trying to get this feeling. I'm not even going to put like a vertical bar on this E. I'm just going to go wah, wah. Do you know what I mean? Anger. Or does it look right? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I need to just taper some sort of E shape in here just to give it a bit more balance. And then again, like bringing these down. And rather, I don't like when I'm trying to get this anger across, I don't think these curved shapes really express that anger enough. So I want to be kind of more straight edged, more angular, because that's going to give us that look and that feel that we're after. So I'm kind of pretty happy with that, if I'm honest, for a few minutes work. But yeah, what I would do here is I'd then probably try and look at different relationships. Maybe I'd try and, bring this E shape to be the top of the G here. Do you know what I mean? And then maybe take this E shape here and make it a part of the R. This kind of rebellious, and then having everything kind of together, is pretty cool. But that feels angry to me. Super angry. So you can see how this emotion, this anger has been brought into this type. So like I mentioned, like when you're creating works based on personality traits or logo types or word marks for your clients, always try and like if they're bold, make it nice and thick and angular. If they're kind of all about energy, do you know what I mean? Like, again, maybe give it that forward lean to have that personality. If they're adventurous, maybe do something a little bit crazy with the type, a little bit adventurous. What we're trying to do is we're trying to add personality and add emotion into our type, because it helps us tell the story. So now we are into happy. So do you know what? I'm going to change tact a little bit here. I'm going to go lowercase because that makes me happy. I'm also going to go slightly curvier. I'm going to go slightly curvier and round and bulbous. Bulbous. La 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 la. Because this kind of, and do you know what? I'm not even going to kind of worry about any sort of organized grid either here. I'm just gonna make this kind of really fun, happy type, nice and soft, nice and calm. And like I said, like none of these are set in stone. like whenever I'm creating this, I'm just trying to kind of conceptualize possible directions. You know, I'm not really worried about whether like a particular letter is bigger than the other one, or, you know, oh, that looks a little bit unbalanced or a little bit untidy. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to create this sense of emotion and try and bring the right energy to it. You know, I always like something I'd like you to remember is like whenever I'm creating any sort of custom typography, Wordmarks, logotypes, like if I've got like a P and a P, what I wouldn't generally do is make one P and then duplicate it and then use it as the other P. I always like them both to have, you know, although they need to be very similar and be Ps, I'd like them to have their own personality. Let's get this Y sorted. Wee! I keep saying wee. Do you know what I mean? But there's a lovely little shape here for the little Y's there. Wee! Do you know what I mean? Like these look like loads of little smiley little gremlins, don't they? Little faces, constantly smiling. Do you know what I mean? So this for me feels happy. And this is like, obviously you'd build this up and, you know, but like I said, like if you're, for example, if you're working again with something very masculine and something that needs to have a little bit of edge to it and something that's kind of going for a particular demographic, you know, angry man, you know, like this kind of style would work. You know, but when you were looking at this and you wanted to kind of emote, kind of fun, childlike approachability, you'd go for something this, you know, something slightly happier, something with curves and bulbous and fun and like no real order to it. Look, it's all over the place. Whee! Same with this one. There's no rules. It's kind of like up here, then it's down here, then it's across here. And this is how we add emotion to our typography. Have fun with it. Fuck around. If you're not fucking around, you're not having fun. Have fun. Fuck around. Don't be like Timmy and angry. Be like James. Happy. Right, so here we are at the third and final part of our lesson 4, module 4. Yeah. Yep. Yes, Timmy. Sketch techniques, and a great place to start. So we've gone through like how we can use a word to dictate our visual direction. We've gone through how we can add emotion to our typography to show a certain vibe. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you something a little bit more technical and share with you. I've actually created a load of random grids. I'm going to give these away to you, and I'm going to create a few more and put them on like a PDF that you can use. But ultimately, what I'm going to teach you is I'm going to teach you how to kind of break down grids and how you can make them work for you, especially when it comes to kind of custom word marks and custom logo types. Because like whereas with like, you know, you even saw with especially the first round of move ones, there's always a slight grid that I will build to help me kind of space out my words better. Like when I'm doing the anger stuff, it doesn't matter so much. You need a little bit more freedom. But when it comes to kind of building a little bit more structure, especially with longer names, like having some sort of grid system is really, really helpful. So I'm going to gift you all of these just so you can see different ones. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use these two particular grids, and I'm going to do a made by James on this one, and then I'm going to do a Timmy shot me on this one. And as you can see very quickly, what I have done, the reason I like to use these grids, this is the MBJ stacker, as you would have heard about already in this course. As you can see, what I'm trying to do with these grids is what it does, it allows me to have some sort of balance. It allows me to ultimately like dictate where things are going. And when it comes to like words like move, or singular words like move, or anger, or happy, like you don't necessarily need a grid that's too structured because it's one word. But when you are going into names like Made by James or Timmy Shot Me, what you should be thinking of is you need one power word. And what I mean by a power word is that it's the word that you focus on. So in my case it would be made, and then by James would be slightly smaller. And in Timmy Shot Me case, it would be Timmy, and then Shot Me we'd hide somewhere. Because if you try and build them all to have like what I would call like a kind of equal sense of power, you're going to end up with something too big, too long. And what you want to do is you want to always try and house it within one word. That's not like a possibly normal thing to do, but whenever I'm kind of developing word marks, I'm either trying to use this MBJ stacker where they can work, or I'm trying to focus on one word and then build the other ones into it. So let's get going, shall we? Right. So all I've got here is just some boggy standard tracing paper, but you can use a light box or whatever. And obviously if you don't like to draw, you can obviously do this within Adobe Illustrator, Canva, Affinity, or whatever program software you use. But I would urge you all sketching, because like you saw with the move, do you know what I mean? You can see things differently when you're starting to make mistakes, obviously. So with this one, we're going to do Made by James. So all I've done is I've put my grid behind this sheet of paper, and we're going to start gridding out like I said, we want the focus word to be made, and then we're going to try and get Made by or by James in there somewhere. So I know Made again has got 4 letters, so what I'd do is I'd like shimmy this down the middle, and then I'm going to half that again roughly, and then I'm going to half that again. So I've got my M, my A, my D, and my E, made. And then what again, I'm just going to kind of very, like I said, I don't want to overly, not overly stimulate, but overly try on these, because I know ultimately what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into Illustrator eventually, and that's where I can do all my kind of fine tuning and my tidying. But as you can see here, I'm using this curve to build my letters, and like I said, these little grids that I've put in just help me bring some sort of balance to my type and my word mark. So what I'm doing here is I'm just staying, as you can see, slightly inside the lines on each. So I've got my rough kern going on, or my tracking. Like I'd probably want to either follow that curve, or maybe that should be straight. We can figure that out later. Got my little counter here, and then I'm going just the other side of this. Made. And then we're going, woo! Now, do I want to, I might give that a little kind of bevel, circular curve, just to make sure everybody knows it's a D, but I'm pretty sure everybody will know it's a D. And again, like consistencies, like I know this width, I need to kind of make sure it's all kind of somewhat the same. So this width I know would be the same as this width, and this width here would be the same as this width. It would be the same as this width, depending on how much kind of movement I wanted on it, much kind of curvature. But that's the kind of stuff I worry about when I go into Adobe later, the old Adobes, because I tend to use Adobe Illustrator for all of my vector stuff. Again, so I know that this width here needs to be the same as this width here, roughly. Do you know what I mean? You never have your E's going all the way to the edge, so you'd bring that little guy in, whoop whoop, and then again, like you'd curve this guy, whoosh. And you can see how this grid has already kind of helped me build this quite cool made. You know, obviously I can embellish it and do some cooler stuff. But again, like this I'd want this to kind of be very similar to this. That's where I'd want my M to finish here. Like maybe I'd bring this down to match this, but we'll see. That's all the stuff that you can tweak and twirl and play with in Adobe, in your vector program or whatever it is later on. So we've got our made. So this is my powerhouse. Now, obviously I have this gap under here, you know, which could be perfect for like a by James. It could be like a little kind of scripty kind of one like this. Do you know what I mean? J M. Do you know what I mean? It could be like this. Do you know what I mean? So it could be a made by James like so. But there are loads of things we could do. But what I'm saying is you've got this beautiful grid. Do you know what I mean? And this grid allows it to have balance, so this would work everywhere. But like, there's also like crazy other cool shit you can do. Like, I'm just thinking here of like, because it's got this lovely curvature to it. Like, I'm thinking like, fucking Superman, mate, fucking Superman. You know, we can get this kind of like a vanishing point here, and then what we can do is we can bring this guy in. You'd probably use your what do you call it? Your ruler for this kind of stuff. But like, this is how much fun you should be having every single day. Do you know what I mean? We bring this guy in, and we bring this guy in, and we bring this guy in, and we bring this guy in. And then what you'd probably want to do is you'd probably want to continue this kind of stuff from here. So you'd bam, 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 bam. You bring this in, and you'd bring this to your vanishing point, and you'd bring this to your vanishing point. Do you know what I mean? So you can start to see, and like what I would do if this was the case, I'd probably scrap this idea, but then what I'd do is I'd probably have some sort of, because this would be my mark, I'd probably have like some sort of cool like scrolly thing here which kind of fit like this. Like maybe like whoop, 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 like whoop, 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 whoop. Do you know what I mean? And then I'd have my by James on this. But you can see how having this grid has allowed me to explore all these different ideas and create something that's structured enough, focused enough, and because it's in a grid, it allows me to make it extremely usable. So, here, made by James. Have fun with that grid. Now, so we've just done the Made by James one using this guy. Now we're going to be doing the Timmy Shot Me with this guy. And what I want to do is, like, the reason I have used this particular grid is because I know, like, when I think of the word Timmy, you know, we've got a T bar and we've got a Y bar. And I'm thinking, like, maybe there's something I can do, which is why I've, like, for the kind of the top part of the T and the bottom part of the Y, I've used this to kind of, maybe this is the way I can kind of hold or bring balance to my design. So let's go for the old Timmy Shot Me. So again, just using my very rough grid, very simple grid. You know, the reason I'm putting it on a slant is just to give it a little bit of style, a little bit of jazz, just like the man himself. Do you know what I mean? So what we're going to do here is we're just going to very lightly start with our T, and what I'd probably do is I'd probably bring that above there, and I'd go whoosh, and then whoosh, and then I'd whoosh this guy, whoosh, all the way along. This little piggy all the way home, Timmy. It's one of our nursery rhymes, wasn't it? This little piggy went to market. There you go. And I'll huff and I'll puff. So, like I said, what I'm trying to do is I'm always trying to make this the same width as this. Like I said, I'm not worrying too much because I know when I get into my kind of digital software, I can do all the tweaks and amends I need to do. You know, always making sure that these are all vertical, even though I'm on this angle, all these want to be vertical because that's the vibe, and that's how we get that lovely balance and that dynamic shape moving. We bring this guy up here. So Timmy's quite a cool dude, strong character, so that's why I'm kind of going for these kind of basically sans serif, but because he's a little bit jazzy, do you know what I might do, jazzy, is I might just kind of like taper these corners a little bit just to give it a little bit of edge. You know, he's into his tattoos. He's a cool dude. He's a cool dude. So I'm just going to kind of give these just a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of energy, a little bit of a tapered edge, just to kind of make it a little bit kind of unique to Timmy. A bit more energy, a bit more Timmy energy. Do you know what I mean? Angry. You're going to regret saying angry. So I'm going to bring this guy. Like I said, I'm not too worried about how much space I've got here for my Y, because I can just continue it. I'm not going to be too far off, but you know, trying to get these M's fairly similar, similar enough where I can go, yeah, that concept can work, because that's all we're doing in this sketch phase, is we're getting ideas down to see if they're going to become something, to see if they're going to be able to work. So I've kind of, like you see, I haven't left enough space here, but I know this grid continues here, and we have these beautiful things called rubbers, which I don't actually have on me right now, but you know, it is what it is. So we're going to have this Y, which needs to be the same as this, but what I want is I want to kind of have this, I want it to have this edge, this angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fuck shit up and do that. That's what I'm going to do, mate. And then I'm going to bring this guy down here. Probably I need to figure out that angle, but we'll get there. And what I would do is I just need to carry on this to finish here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring this guy across here. So we've got, like I said, this T going across here and this Y going along here, because then it houses everything all sweetie irie. Do you know what I mean? We bring this across. So now I've got my Timmy. Do you know what I mean? And then what I want to do, I'm like, okay, so now I want to figure out like where do I put my Timmy shot me? So I've got my Timmy. But then in here, what I'd probably do is I would use this bottom part of the Y to house the Timmy shot me, or the shot me, I should say. So this, again, is how you can see this grid has allowed me to create, I mean, I've got this bit of a wank gap here. I'm not too sure what I would do with that. I'd probably play with that. I could either bring this part of the T down, or I could bring this part of the Y up, or I could just leave it. It doesn't really matter. I could even bring this across here. But what I've got here is a really solid basis to build upon. Like you could even like go, right, now I want to build some depth to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, woof. You know, bring this guy across. Do you know what I mean? And use this as like a three-dimensional element. Do you know what I mean? You could bring all this do. Do you know what I mean? Like this would all be black, so it wouldn't matter. But you know, you're starting to create something really fucking cool. A really good development of the existing Timmy logo. What do you think, Timmy?
Banging.
Banging,
Love
mate.
it.
Banging, mate. Banging. Right? So this is why grids are really useful, especially with word marks and logotypes. They're really useful for you to just have as almost kind of safety nets to help balance your designs. Because I know that this would now be pretty easy to take into Adobe, into Illustrator, vector it up, and I can then do all the detailed gaps, changes, tweaks to make it all perfection. And yeah, Timmy shot me using that grid.